On the sidelines of the 80th United Nations General Assembly, Nigeria's Minister of Health, Ali Pasi, says the country is making tremendous strides in reducing maternal mortality, reaffirming that women's health remains a top priority for President Tinubu's administration.
It certainly is a high priority of our administration. And over the last 2 years in this administration, we've seen dramatic increase in access to antenatal care, making emergency obstetric services free for women who attend empaneled facilities, and thousands of women have had cesarean section reimbursed, taking away the affordability challenge. So the quality of obstetric services doesn't become the decider, or the affordability doesn't become the decider of whether a woman lives or dies. And with that, we are seeing maternal mortality risks go down significantly. In addition, harnessing the power of women requires them to also have access to reproductive health services at the quality that they need, attending to women's health issues. Those are efforts that are geared towards changing the narrative. And while the DHS that was done 2023 shows still high maternal mortality, we're expecting a mini DHS in 2026, which will tell us whether the efforts done through what we call MAMI has begun to numb or change the direction, the trajectory. So the narrative, you can make it glass half full or it's half empty. Within the glass is half full. That Nigeria is making tremendous progress in expanding primary health care, in ensuring that women survive childbirth, and that our basic emergency obstetric service centers, as well as the more complex ones, are upgraded.
All right, joining me now for more on the UNGA is African and International Affairs Analyst Professor Tunde Esan. Good to have you join us, Prof. Let's start with this statement by the Vice President. He's advocating for Nigeria to have a seat on the United Security Council. What's your sense of that ask, and what even qualifies one, and is Nigeria qualified indeed to have a seat on that council?
Let me go back a little bit to the back. Let's do a review of how it all started. It started around 2005. This African Union Special Assembly that was held in Tripoli, in Libya, where Africans leaders said, look, we should have a seat at the Security Council of the United Nations. And of course, it goes on because Nigeria was very, very prominent on the international scene. We were a big player, not only in Africa, or even in the world affairs, as it were. So it was only natural that people take a look at Nigeria as a possible representative of Africa at the United Nations, at least at the permanent, what do you call it?
Seat. Security Council seat.
Having a permanent seat at the Security Council. So it is not out of place for the Vice President to have expressed that opinion, because it's an ongoing, it has been there for a fairly long time. People have been asking, why is it that Africans don't have a seat at the international, at that level, you understand, at the United Nations Security Council, particularly when you discover that almost all the other continents have a seat. Western Europe has a seat, 2 seats. Eastern Europe has a seat, Russia is there. Then, of course, Asia Pacific has a seat, China is there. And, of course, Latin Americans has a seat with United States of America. So it's only natural for Africans to ask that, why is it that we don't have a seat at the UN Security Council, at that level?
Yeah, it talks about what you call the Zulwini consensus and the said declaration.
Yeah.
This is what it is about. But then, what is Africa not doing, or what should it be doing to get this seat? Well, what would more African inclusion mean to you, as UNGA opens?
What it means to me, basically, and what it should mean to all Africans, is that if we have a voice at the Security Council, what it means basically is that the veto power can be influenced in whichever way it goes, because the 5 Security Council members has a veto power. And when it comes to African affairs, You know, what it means basically is that if any issue is, if any issue involve Africa, it means that we don't even have a representative who can talk to other members of the council to say, look, we should not veto this. So it's very, very critical. It's important for strategic reasons and for international engagements, as it were.
Indeed, you can be more correct, but is Africa doing what needs to be done for more inclusion?
Well, we're doing what we should do at whatever level you think about it. For example, the basic factor and the basic challenge in Africa is unity at the African level. You know, I mean, the North African countries were not too, until of recent, well, maybe a few years back, when Gaddafi championed African renaissance, as it were, and was going about. But over time, there have been divisions at that level. Even in the African Union, there is no cohesion such a way that, okay, the 54 African countries, they can speak with one voice at all levels. Then that way they can be heard and maybe respected more.
Fantastic. Do you think that the indices for acceptance or inclusion are tilted, as it were, against Africa, or put in another way, that the playing field and those who make decisions of those to play in it are tilted against Africa?
No, it's not necessarily tilted, like I said. Don't forget that the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations is a Nigerian, an African, you understand, and a lady, you know. So what I'm saying essentially is not necessarily tilted, but it depends on the way you present yourself. You should be talking about the economy powers too, you know. I mean, if you are a great player in the world and you don't depend on it, then it gives you more power, it gives you more confidence, and of course, you can marshal more resources in order to push your case at whatever level. So we should not forget about that. But when Africans go to United Nations and they intend meeting other other leaders, particularly from other parts of the world, with a cap or with a bowl in hand, then it becomes a problem.
That's what you mean. With a cap in hand.
Or a bowl.
Or a bowl.
Or a bowl at hand.
That's interesting. So we should begin to do a self-searching.
Yeah.
Begin to look inwards and see what we need to do to have the clout.
Yes.
To be able to.
But let's not forget that, you know, what we're talking about is the Vice President of Nigeria, Shetima, talking at the United Nations level. And when he talks about Nigeria, he has the right to say so.
Yep. Because
Nigeria has been a big player, 200 million people, the largest population in Africa.
We're always talking about our population.
You know, that is huge too. It's important. And so he has the right to say that. And apart from that, he equally has the right to say, look, we have the largest number of indigenous black population in the world. You know, that is important.
Yes.
Though our economy may not be the first or second or even third, but we have the largest number of indigenous black population in the world. So when we talk about that at that level, so he has the right. And of course, we can only appreciate his position and the position of Nigeria. But then it depends on other African countries, like I said, and how we present ourselves, how African unions present it, whether we are going to have one. Some people are even saying we should have two. There's nothing wrong with having two at that level, you know.
That's actually what that said declaration, what they call is Unini consensus is saying.
Yeah.
Africa should have to.
Should have to, yeah.
How can Africa, nay Nigeria, I think that's what we're discussing, have a louder voice? Well, have a louder voice via participation and contributions at UNGA.
The only way we can have a louder voice, like I said, basically, normally there are contributions. For example, United Nations has an office, you know, an advisory body, an advisory office on African affairs. The major challenge we have in Africa, apart from the unity among the African countries, basically is mobilizing the other sub-regional and regional organizations towards a cause. It's very, very important. We should maintain very, very strong relations with the EU, particularly with Brussels. It's very, very important and critical. You understand? When people are taking decisions, particularly in Addis Ababa, they should take this into consideration, that Africa should not be a destination, but it should be a point of where people take off to other parts of the world. You understand? Particularly when it comes to issues, when other people come all over the world and say, look, African Union meeting is holding in Addis Ababa, and we want to come and see what we can do in this case, or involving issues that concerns Africa. We should equally be interested in what happened in Europe. For example, what is going on? I have not seen any concerted effort on Russia-Ukraine war, at least by African countries.
Even Gaza.
Even Gaza. There has not been any concerted position on that. So that matters a lot.
In fact, I think that's where my next question is going. The late Thomas Sankara and Nelson Mandela likened Palestinian struggle to African liberation rights. I mean, two of them, they are dead. Yeah. Do you see it that way? Only Eritrea and Cameroon have not sided with having a Palestinian state, I mean, statehood for Palestine. What should Africa be doing about events, just like we said, about events in Gaza and Ukraine?
Basically, we should not forget that about the internal dynamics within African countries, the religious divide, the ethnic divides. That really matters a lot, particularly in having one voice. You know, so it is only natural for North Africans to have one voice when it comes to issues that concerns Gaza. And of course, countries like Nigeria with, multi-ethnic, of course, multi-religious platforms and ethnic groups will naturally be very careful. So that is very, very strong in Africa compared to other parts of the world. So that is why, and one of the reasons why it may be difficult to have a concerted position or a united position on Gaza, on Palestine. So that is what I think is a major factor.
Before I let you go, let's just discuss a little bit on what Ali Pate, the Minister of Health, said about tremendous strides in reducing maternal mortality. Is reaffirming that women's health remains a top priority for the president. Yeah. What do you think about what he just said?
Of course, it should be.
Yeah, because I mean, Africa, I've discussed with...
if you look at it very well, mortality rate is very high in Nigeria.
Yeah, particularly with the question of power.
Yeah.
How power disrupts the hospitals. I've had to discuss with Minister of Minister of Health for State. Yeah. And how power really it's a problem.
Not only power, manpower too. Not just power, not just
electricity.
Not just electricity. We are talking about manpower is very, very critical.
Especially with the Japa syndrome.
About 50% to 60% of Nigerians live in rural areas. You understand? Access to, you understand, basic health facilities it's not that easy. You can travel about 100 kilometers before you meet, you understand, the minimum standard, that you can say, okay, this is an health facility that we can, minimum health care that you can access. It can be that bad in some parts of Nigeria. Yeah. And in a nation where you don't have emergency units operating very well, particularly, you understand, most of the hospitals are ill-equipped, you understand, the manpower are not there. So it is difficult. But be that as it may, the Minister of Health has been operating at a very high level. You remember, I was outside the country, a key player in the health sector. You understand? So it is only natural for him to draw the attention of the world to what we are doing, and hopefully thinking that maybe we can get more support internationally when it comes to that. That's one of the reasons why he did that.
And whether we're doing enough is another thing, because you remember just the other day, doctors just called off their strike. But the FCT, I think they're not. I don't know whether FCT is still on with their strikes or not, because of what we're discussing. But we'll leave it there for now. African and International Affairs Analyst, Professor Tunde Esan, thank you for being here.